Hello everyone, welcome back. What we are going to learn in this video is how to deploy a Springboot Microservices application into AKS Cluster using Jenkins and Helm. So if you look at this diagram, so let's take a use case. Let's say you are a DevOps engineer, you are working with a team, they are completely building microservices and they are deploying their microservices into AKS Cluster, and you were asked to create a CI/CD pipeline in order to automate the end-to-end. So how do you actually do that? That's exactly what we are going to cover as part of this video. So if you look at this diagram, this is a Spring Boot application configured in GitHub, and we need to create a Jenkins pipeline that is going to check out code from GitHub, and the pipeline is going to build the jar file, build the Docker image, and then tag the Docker image, and then push the Docker image into ACR, and then finally pipeline will deploy the microservices into AKS cluster using Helm. Okay, so this is the process flow diagram which we are trying to achieve here. All right, so let's get started. So if you look at the prerequisite, yes, we need to have Jenkins running. Jenkins needs to have Docker installed. Okay, so this is my Jenkins up and running. This Jenkins is hosted on Azure Cloud. Okay, and I have already installed Docker on this Jenkins virtual machine. So if you see here, this is my Jenkins running on, so this already has Docker installed. Okay, and then if you also see here, we also need to have Azure CLI install, Helm install, and then kubectl install. So I have already installed all of them over here. Okay, and if you also see kubectl, that is also installed, and then of course I also install Helm as well. Perfect. So my Jenkins is hosted in Azure Cloud. I was able to install all the necessary CLI tools. Perfect. And then this is my Spring Boot application configured in GitHub. So this is my Spring Boot application configured in GitHub, and then this is my Docker file. So all we are doing is build the jar file, okay, and then I'm running these commands, okay, in order to start my Spring Boot application running in a Docker container. All right, awesome. So how are we going to achieve this? So yes, we need to create AKS cluster, okay, because that is where we are going to deploy our Spring Boot application, and we need to create ACR repo as well. So if you look at this diagram, so this is our AKS cluster, and then this is our Azure Container Registry. So this is where we are going to store our Docker image, and then this is where we are going to deploy. Okay, and then we are going to create a namespace in the AKS cluster. This is where we are going to deploy. In this namespace only, we are going to deploy our Spring Boot application. And then the way we are going to deploy is using Helm. So Helm is the package manager for Kubernetes applications. I have several videos on Helm, so feel free to go through them. Okay, but using Helm, we are going to simplify our microservices deployment. So we are going to create a Helm chart. I will quickly show you how to create a Helm chart locally, and then how to commit the Helm chart into GitHub. And then once we create a Helm chart, we need to modify the values so that you can mention the Docker image name and everything, right? So that Helm can use those files during deployment. And then finally, we are going to create a Jenkins pipeline, and that is going to have all the stages, right? We need to build a jar file, build the Docker image, and then tag the image, and then push the image into ACR. And then finally, we need to deploy. And then finally, we will verify the deployment in the namespace, and then finally, we will access the application in the browser. All right, so yeah, so these are the implementation steps. So let's try to achieve one by one. All right, so let me take you guys to my website. So this is my website, folks, coachdevops.com. I will be posting the link right below the video as well. So I have all the steps documented very clearly over here. Okay, so everything is documented, so feel free to go through it. And then if you actually see here, the way we are going to create AKS cluster, of course, you can create AKS cluster in so many different ways. In fact, if you go to my website, if you just type AKS cluster creation here, If you type AKS Cluster, you're gonna see there you go. You see here, right? There are so many ways you can create a AKS cluster. Okay, but I'm going to simplify the AKS cluster creation. I'm going to use a shell script because I have already created a shell script. So click on this particular link. So if you see here, this is a script which is going to create AKS cluster as well as ACR repo, and then the namespace as well. Okay, so this is the name of the cluster, and then this is the region where I'm going to create, and then this is the cluster name. Sorry, this is the group name. Sorry, this is the AKS the resource group name because so this is the so if you look at the shell script, this is the resource group that needs to be created because all the resources would be created under the resource group, and then this is the region, and then this is the name of the AKS cluster, and then this is the ACR name. Okay, so make sure you give unique ACR name. And then if you see here, first we are creating the resource group, and then we are creating AKS cluster with 2 worker nodes, and then we are creating Azure Container Registry, and then most importantly, we need to give pull access for AKS in order to download the image from ACR. Okay, and then we need to configure our kube credentials, right? So this is using this, you will be able to access through kubectl command. And then finally, we need to create a namespace in the AKS cluster using, this particular command. Okay, so this is where we are going to deploy our microservices inside AKS cluster. All right. Okay, so let's go back here. So why don't we start off with that? Okay, and then of course I also have my source code in GitHub, so we will talk about that, right? So we'll cover one by one. Okay, so let me start my cluster creation. So I'm going to go to my Jenkins. So let me go to my Jenkins. So if you see here, the way we are going to create cluster is we need to switch into a Jenkins user first. So I'm going to switch into Jenkins user. Okay, very good. And then I'm going to I need to log in into AKS first, okay, because I need to authenticate with my Azure cloud. So of course there are so many ways you can authenticate. With Azure cloud you can use service principal and whatnot, right? But I'm going to simplify. I'm going to log in into AKS cluster using Azure. I'm going to log in into AKS cluster using Azure CLI. So let's type this command az login. So when you do that, if you see here, the best way to authenticate is, yes, you can copy this URL and then go to browser. All we have to do is enter this code. So this is the code. You just have to select your Microsoft credentials. So click on this one. And then you just have to say continue. So you're giving permission in order to access Azure Cloud using Azure CLI. Click on continue. That's it, right? That's it. And then if you also go back, so this also confirms that we are able to log in into Azure Cloud successfully using Azure CLI command. Perfect. So let me close this window. I don't have to keep that open. So let me go back to the instructions. So let's continue. So what we did, we switched to a Jenkins user, and then I was able to log in into Azure Cloud perfectly fine. So now all we have to do is go ahead and then create AKS cluster using that shell script. Okay, so I'm going to create a simple shell script file. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and then copy the entire shell script. Like I said, click on this link, and then we are going to copy the entire shell script. So this is just to simplify. It is up to you if you want to create your AKS cluster. There are so many ways, like I mentioned, but I just want to simplify our cluster creation. So I would like to choose this option. So make sure you don't have too many spaces here. So what would happen is when you copy and paste, sometime it may mess up with a lot of space. So make sure you take care of it. I know it's kind of annoying, but that is what it is. So don't give space, especially in between that command. So I think that should be it, right? So like we discussed, we are going to create cluster, create ACR, and then give full access, and then finally create a namespace as well. All right, great. So why don't I save this? All I have to do is execute this command, execute the shell script. There you go. So as you can see here, it is in the process of creating resource group, and then creating AKS cluster, and then creating ACR repo. Okay, so everything is going to happen. So this might take maybe 3 to 5 minutes. So while the cluster creation is happening, why don't we move forward with the next step? All we have to do is now create a Helm chart, so we can keep everything ready, all our configuration file, everything we can keep it ready. All right, so what I'm going to do now, since I have configured my GitHub here, I also created, so this is my Visual Studio Code. So I have already downloaded my source code over here. Okay, so my source code is already configured in my local machine. So if you see here, if I say git pull, so you see here, right? So I have the entire source code here. Okay, perfect. So what we are going to do is we need to create a Helm chart. Okay, so how do you create a Helm chart? It's very simple. All you have to do is use Helm create command. So let me create a Helm chart. So let's say Helm create, and then I'm going to say my AKS charts. Okay, so again you can give any name. Make sure that this is in tie with make sure that you give a name that is reference to your microservices or application or project name. Okay, but just for this demo purpose, I'm kind of giving this chart name. Okay, so now chart directory has been created. There you go, you see here, right? The chart directory has been created. So if you see here, this is the directory here. Okay, so if you're wondering how many files are created under that directory, let's do this, right? There you go. So 4 directories got created, right? Look at that. So a lot of files. Okay, so Helm is the package manager for Kubernetes. It is going to create all the templates for you. You just have to go and modify the reference files, and then you should be able to deploy your microservices. So we are interested in a couple of files. Let's start with the values.yaml file. So this is the file which is actually going to have the Docker image information, right? You see here. So they have just provided Nginx as an example. So we just need to modify this, because we are going to store our Docker image in ACR. Okay, so the way we are going to build our Docker image using Jenkins pipeline is, so this is the model what we are going to follow. Okay, so if you see here, this is the ACR, right? ACR repo what we are going to create. So this is how the URL is going to be. So you can update that, and then the tag, image tag, we are going to pass on this dynamically from Jenkins pipeline. So don't use latest, that is not recommended. So I'm going to leave that as it is. Okay, and then let's see here, and then we also need to make sure that we need to change the service type as a load balancer. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's scroll down. So let's go and make that change. There you go. So we need to change this as a load balancer just for this demo purpose. Of course, you can feel free to use your ingress and everything, right? So you can do that. So let me save this. So that is the first change, and then let's go to the next file. So we need to modify the deployment.yaml file. Since our application is Springboot, we need to open up that port. So go to deployment.yaml file. So if you look for the container port number, that's supposed to be 8080. Just change it. That's it. So that's it, right? So those two files have been done, and then all we have to do is save the files and then commit and then push into repository. So if I just say git status, it says that yeah, this entire directory got created, right? So now all we have to do is git add, okay, and then git commit -m. Let's say added Helm chart for my microservice, and then git push. There you go. So if I go into my GitHub, if I say refresh here, there you go, right? You all see here. So our Helm chart has been pushed, and then you can definitely see that the values got changed. Okay, perfect. Some of the values got changed. Very good. So let me go back to the instructions. So why don't we check if the cluster got created or not? It is still creating. So while the cluster is being created, why don't we go to our Jenkins? So this is our Jenkins, right? Let's make sure the plugin is installed, because Jenkins is going to use Docker, the Docker pipeline plugin. So I have already installed. I think if we go to install plugin, you're going to see the Docker pipeline plugin got installed. Very good. There you go, guys. You see here, right? The cluster got created, and then it also created the namespace as well. So we can verify real quick. Let's actually go ahead and then say kubectl get nodes. Wow, there you go. You all see here. So we have 2 worker nodes. That is what we actually created as part of our shell script, isn't it? So if I take you back to my shell script, look at here, guys. We are creating AKS cluster with a 2 worker node. Okay, node count 2. Okay, very good. And then let's also go ahead and then look at the namespaces as well. There you go. So this is the namespace what we created from our shell script. So that is actually over here. That's the last command. Okay, very good, right? So far so good. And then of course, if you want to see the ACR information and all, let's go to Azure Cloud. Okay, let's click on the resource group, because this was the resource group what we created. So everything is under that resource group. Okay, and this is our ACR repo what we just created, and so this is where we are going to upload our Docker image. Okay, so Jenkins needs to have permission to ACR repo so that it can authenticate with the ACR repo, and then it can upload the Docker image. Okay, all right. So what would be the next step is, yes, we need to create the admin user, and then we need to kind of authenticate from Jenkins into ACR. So we will do that shortly. Okay, so everything is good, right? And then of course that is our cluster. So this is our AKS cluster. Okay, so you can see here, right? So if you want to click on the namespace, these are the namespaces. That's our namespace name. Okay, so everything you can actually see here. Okay, so these are the things what has been deployed. These are all the default deployments. All right, and then you can see here we have our 2 worker nodes. Perfect. Okay, everything is looking good. So why don't we move forward to the next step? Okay, so scroll down over here. Everything I have documented here. So let's go into Jenkins and then create these values, right? So since we are going to use Jenkins, since it is a Springboot application, we need to configure our build tool. So we are going to use Maven as the build tool. So why don't we configure Maven here? So I'm going to use Maven 3 and then save. Perfect. And then let's also go ahead and then create some credentials in order for Jenkins to talk to authenticate with ACR. So let's click on add credentials and then username and password, right? So let me go back to ACR here and then click on access keys. Okay, so just enable admin user for now, and then let's copy the username. This is the username, and then you can use either of this password. Let me use this password. So don't worry guys, this password will be deleted right after the demo, so no one can access my ACR. Okay, perfect. So click on create. So there you go, right? So we have created credentials for authenticating with ACR. Perfect. So let's go back to our Jenkins here. So now what we can do, we can start creating a pipeline that can do all the automation, right? So let's start with the pipeline here. Let me click on new item. So I'm going to click on my Helm deploy job, click on pipeline, say okay, go to pipeline. Okay, so let me create a basic pipeline now. Hello world. Okay, so let's start customizing our pipeline. So we need to check out code. Okay, so from where I'm going to check out, I'm going to check out from my GitHub repository. Okay, so I have already made this as a public repo. So anyone can fork my repository and then make changes in the respective file if you like. Check out from version control, repo URL, and then since this is a public repository, you don't have to provide any credentials. And then what is the branch name? The branch name is master. So I can leave that as it is. Master is here, and then generate pipeline script. There you go. So this is the code for checking out from my GitHub. Very good. And then what is the next stage? The next stage is, we need to build the jar file, isn't it? So I'm going to say build jar, and we are going to use Maven for that. Okay, so I'm going to say something like Maven clean install. Okay, so that should take care of creating the jar file. So apply save. So before I go too far, I just want to make sure that our pipeline code is working fine. There you go. There you go, guys. The image has been built. The next step would be to build the Docker image. Okay, so for that, what we have to do, we need to provide all this information, right? So I'm going to create an environment section here. Okay, so I'm going to provide my registry information here, right? So let me create a variable called registry. So you all know the registry URL, right? We already got it from our ACR. Let's go back here and then provide the registry information over there. Okay, and then let's also create a couple of variables as well. So if you remember, we also created credentials, right, in Jenkins. Let me use that as a registry credential. That name is ACR. Okay, and then let's create another variable called registry name. The registry name is nothing but this one, right? We already have that. The registry name is nothing but this one. Okay, all right, and then I'm going to create a variable called Docker image. Perfect. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and then build the Docker image. So I'm going to go here, stage. I'm going to say build image, steps. I'm going to say, we are going to use script block, then docker.build registry. Okay, and then you can store this in a Docker image. Okay, and then you can tag a Docker image. So tagging the Docker image is really recommended. Okay, so the way we are going to tag is we are going to pass on we will, okay, while pushing the Docker image we will tag it. Okay, so we can leave it like that for now. So this is fine for now. Let's build the Docker image. Okay, and you can also see that this is being tagged with the latest image. That's fine. We will fix it when we upload our Docker image. Very good. So the Docker image has been built. So the next step would be to upload the Docker image into ACR, I'm going to say upload to ACR steps block. Okay, and then we just have to use this command. So let me copy and paste, there's nothing wrong. Okay, so this is the registry URL we have already provided over here. Okay, and then we want to push the image like that. Okay, so apply and save. Oh. I have one too many. There you go. Okay, apply, save, build now. Okay, so the image is oh, okay, so because I'm using wrong credentials. The registry credential is this one. Okay, so let's check the console output. So it is failing for some reason. It says that no such property registry URL. Okay, so let me see if I made a typo. Let's go to configure, go to pipeline. Let's see here. Okay, so this is the variable name I'm actually using. Oh, I don't have declared that. I made a typo here. Okay, let me fix that. There you go. So that's the registry URL. So if you look at the pipeline stage, this is going to authenticate, right, with this ACR repo with this credential, and then it's going to tag the Docker image based on the build number. So this is the default variable from Jenkins. So save it, click on build now. Awesome, there you go guys. As you can see here, perfect. See here, so it was able to authenticate with it was able to authenticate with the ACR, and then finally able to tag the Docker image and then push the Docker image. Perfect. So if I go into ACR, so go to resource group here, click on container registry, and then click on repositories. There you go. This is our repository. So click on it. There you go, guys. Do you all see that? So the image has been tagged dynamically, and then you can also see the timing here as well. Perfect. Awesome, right? So we are able to build the Docker image successfully and then push the Docker image into ACR. So all we have to do is move on to the next stage, which is nothing but Helm deployment. Okay, so let me go back to the pipeline, configure, pipeline. All we have to do is go ahead and then write the next stage. So I'm going to go back here, stage. This is nothing but Helm deploy, steps block, script block. Okay, so how are you going to write the code here? So we are going to use Helm. Okay, Helm upgrade. Okay, and then let's get the code from here. So I will explain you everything. So if you see here, I want to have a dynamic build number. That's what I have here. Okay, so that's the version. Okay, and then install, we need to provide the chart name. So if you see here, this is the chart name. Let me fix that. Okay, and then the namespace. So the namespace is this one we just created a few moments ago. Helm deployment is the namespace, isn't it? So that is the namespace. Perfect. And then the image tag. So what we are going to do, we want to pass the image tag dynamically. So that is what it is, right? If you see here, this is the build number, right? That's a Jenkins build number. So that's what we want to use. Okay, so the image tag will be passed dynamically. Okay, so this is what we are trying to do. Helm upgrade, version this, and then install. Okay, and then our chart name, our namespace name, and then the image tag. That's it. Okay, so apply, save, click on build now. Wow, see here guys, so it was trying to see that whether the version exists. It say the version does not exist, so it is trying to install. So it was able to install. So now we should be able to access our application. So all we have to do is go back to our Jenkins EC2 instance, Jenkins virtual machine, and then say kubectl get pods. Obviously you don't see anything because you need to pass on the namespace name. Perfect, there you go. See here guys, so that is our deployment. Of course you can also use helm command as well. You can say helm list. If you say that, you don't see anything because you need to pass the namespace. So let me use helm ls and then provide the namespace. There you go. So that is our release detail, right? Okay, so how do you access the application now? So let's try to use kubectl get service because we are exposing our service through a load balancer. There you go. So this is the, it's still taking some time to create that. I think it will take some time. Let's give some time. So why don't I check the pod logs while it is coming up? I'm going to say kubectl describe pod and then the pod name and then the namespace. Let me see what it says. Wow, it said that successfully assigned. So obviously, right? So let me check the services now. Now it should be up and running. There you go. You all see that? So copy that IP, go to the browser. There you go guys. You all see that? So now we are able to access the Springboot application which is deployed inside AKS Cluster. So why don't we do one thing? Why don't we make a quick code change and then see if you are able to see the changes are reflected in the application, right? So let me go into my repo. So this is my repo. Let me make some code changes here. Go to src main. Let me go here. Let me edit this file. So basically all the values are coming from here. Okay, so let me do one thing. Let me make some changes here. I'm gonna say we are deploying Springboot application inside AKS Cluster using Helm chart and Jenkins pipeline. Let me do one thing. I'm gonna say hello all. We are testing Springboot deployment with Helm and Jenkins pipeline. Okay, so let me save this. Commit changes. Click on commit. All right, so I committed the code, and of course, the way you have configured Jenkins, you can also configure through webhooks and whatnot, isn't it? Depending on how you want to run your pipeline, but I'm going to run manually for now. So let's see what it does. So it was able to pick up my code changes. Remember, we updated that file. Let's see. Okay, so building the image, it is trying to upload the image. So we can also go into ACR, click on the repositories. So time is 10:42. There you go. The image has been uploaded here. Perfect. There you go. The changes also has been pushed here. So how do you see that? Let's go here, and then let's say Helm list. There you go, guys. As you can see here, it was able to deploy the newer version of the changes here. Okay. Let's try to see the pod. There you go. The new pod also has been deployed. Okay. It should actually delete the old pod. Okay, I need to check my code why it is not deleting, because we don't want to keep our old code running, isn't it? Okay, so I will take a look at it, why it is happening like that. But let me go into my let's try to view the service as well. There you go. So this is the service external IP. Let me go and try to access that. There you go, guys. Do you all see that? We are able to see the code changes. All right, so everything is looking good. Last but not the least, we also need to clean up our cluster as well. Don't ever forget that, otherwise, you would be charged from Azure. So let's go ahead and then delete whatever we have created. So how do you do that? You can use again, right? You can use the Azure CLI command. All you have to do is just delete the resource group, whatever we have created. So if you remember the resource group name, you can go here and then you can pick up the resource group what we just created. This was the resource group name. Let's pass on that one. And then of course you're going to pass on the you just have to say yes, no, wait, right? So it doesn't have to, you don't have to wait for that. Okay, that's it. So this will take some time. Okay, it may take 2 to 3 minutes in order to clean up everything what we have done. All right, so that's it, guys. That's how you would deploy your Springboot microservices into AKS Cluster using Jenkins and Helm. Thank you for watching this video.